Hello, my name is Rob McLeod. I am the CEO of Black Wolf Copper and Gold. I am an exploration geologist from the mining town of Stewart, BC in the southern Golden Triangle, and which is right on the border with Hyder, Alaska. And just across the peninsula from our flagship Niblack project, which is a copper, gold, silver, zinc, volcanogenic massive sulfide deposit. It's well advanced. It's got a substantial high-grade bulk mineable underground resource, full-size production ramp, and I'm really happy to come on the show today to talk about 2 rounds of drilling that we have done since the last time I've been on Crux in 2 different areas of the property. Additionally, we have recently staked what I feel are highly prospective gold silver properties in the Golden Triangle, but across the border in Alaska that has had no modern exploration, where we are tracking down the source to some very high grade gold and silver. So please check out our website at blackwolfcopperandgold.com. You can follow me on Twitter as well too at goldfinder12.
Hello, Rob. How are you?
Good, Matt. How are you? It's good to see you again. It's been a few months.
It has. I haven't seen you since March. You've done the name change. You are now a Black Wolf. How's that gone down?
Well, it's, there's a saying in the business, what better way to bury the bodies than a good name change? But so it's actually, when my previous company was IDM Mining, and a lot of our same management team came over for us to start a new company. And Black Wolf was about our 10th name choice. There's been a lot of juniors, as you know, out there of every single name imaginable, but Black Wolf, Copper and Gold had never been taken. And as actually inspired, the name was inspired by there are 2 kind of packs of wolves in around the Golden Triangle area. One are traditional gray wolves, and there are some others apparently that have domesticated dog mixed in that are black. And when I was a kid, I was scared of wolves. That was my big paranoia. And I'm embracing that old fear. And I think it's just a wonderful name.
Beautiful. Okay.
We change the name, raise some money, and put out some drill results.
Hopefully that's the hardest thing that you're going to have to do, picking a name. We should talk about mining, because in fact, I'm going to point people to the link below for the last conversation we had, where we kind of jumped into business plan, strategy, team, money, backgrounds of everyone. Real good conversation there, I thought. Let's talk about some of the things that you have been doing since March. You've raised some money. Was that easy? $5.4 million. Was that easy?
So it's, you know what? It can always be easier if you're tacking on warrants. But you take everything that you've learned when you start a new company. Is what did I screw up in the past? And as CEO, I'd financed with too many warrant deals. And I'm an investor. I buy stock in other juniors. I'll clip warrants, even of companies that I love. And maintaining that good share structure is really important to our team. So we raised $5.4 million. We have really supportive shareholders, really interested new, particularly European institutions that have come in that appreciate structure. It would have been, hey, if we had tacked on a warrant, we could have raised $20 million. So there's a lot of interest in, and maybe I'm exaggerating on that amount, but there's a lot of interest, as you know, in copper stories. So Black's polymetallic copper, gold, silver, zinc. So you can, whatever is hot at the time, you can brand it that way. But it wasn't. It was pretty easy to raise that money to keep on drilling, especially on. And actually, we announced and closed the financing prior to releasing drill results. And we did it at the same price as the previous time.
Yeah, nice. I noticed that. We'll talk about the drill results in a second, because they're good. So with the type of investor that you got in this round, because you raised 5.3, I think, last year, but what type of investor did you bring in here? Were you bringing in European family offices? Were you bringing in more institutional? What was the blend?
I think we didn't have a huge long list of placees. It was about 30, a little over 30. And most of them were institutions and just kind of in that sort of boutique. There's a couple of, and it's really encouraging as a CEO to see, there's a couple of new funds that have started up in Europe. There have been some existing shareholders such as Delbrook Capital here in Vancouver that have been long time backers of mine, at least maintained or increased their position. And then, it's really interesting. I'm fairly active on mining Twitter. Is a lot of investors actually came in through that had followed me and looked at all the photos of my Vizsla dogs that I post and other commentary that actually built up that relationship that way that came in. And I've got a good friend who's our lead broker with Haywood Securities, brought in a bunch of his clients that really follow him, a guy named Graham Work. And so it's a really good list of places that are long Blackwolf.
Yeah, I mean, you've had a good run of it since we spoke. We spoke to you, middle of March, 85 cents, you're up to 126. I think you did this placing at 80 cents. So, yeah, it's been a good reaction by the marketplace, and I think has been helped by some of these drill results. When you kind of run us through some of the numbers that we should be looking at?
Sure, and man, I tell you, the great thing about VMS, massive sulfide systems, is that if it's base metal rich, you typically know if it's going to run or not. And actually, our most recent round, or our first round of results, we had really good assays, but by far the most important results from that drilling program is that it validated our geological model for the whole Niblack system. See, these VMS systems are stratabound, one type of, in this case, it's felsic volcanic rocks that host all the mineralization. And Niblack's an older deposit. It's Neoproterozoic age. It's so it's gone through some deformation. There's two big folding events. So really what happened on the deposit, it's like how you'd fold a beach towel, is it was folded once and then it's been folded again. And so what the big breakthrough was, and it was actually a master's student that did really precise uranium lead edge dates, found that the whole sequence was overturned. So that changes if you flip that refolded fold over on its head. It really changes how you approach your exploration. So we validated that geological model. We hit two limbs in an area where we drilled it. It was actually a synform rather than previously interpreted as an antiform. And that first batch of result is really high grade. It was like 4 to 8% sort of copper values with associated gold, silver, and zinc, and in an area that's a kilometer away from our current resources. So this is a whole new area. And actually, there's probably enough drilling there when we update our resources, it can go in. So that was really well received. We spiked up to $1.50. What are the negatives to having a tight share structure? Is often you don't really quite have the liquidity, or you get pretty volatile to have some new funds and stuff come in. So we've been consolidating here kind of in the $1.20, $1.30 range for a while. And then we've just released our second batch of drill results from our main deposit, the Lookout Zone, where and there the real breakthrough, and I believe it's related to some of this folding again, is and it started with our first hole. It was the first time this management team has looked at these rocks. So we said, okay, let's do a fairly safe hole in this area where we can add some more and get a good understanding of the geology. We sort of expected a 1 to 5 meter wide intercept, and then we added a second hole right away. We hit two that were in around the 30 meter range of in and around 3% copper equivalents. So you build up tons really quickly, and the Lookout Zone's a really wide deposit. There's kind of this big, and these are typical for these VMS systems. You get these big troughs of mineralization. And the guts of it, in the current resource is up to 120 meters wide. So, it can stand bulk mining and these grades for the type of mining that would be envisioned for this deposit are very good, and especially with really good recoveries. So we're really pleased with how the project is progressing. And we've also announced, it's our ambition to take this project to the finish line, which in our world is getting a bankable feasibility study done, and then you make the decision if you're building or selling or whatever. We have decided to upgrade our site infrastructure and put in a larger camp that will be able to support a lot more work in the drilling and engineering and stuff that would be required to advance the project. So it's been really busy on that project side, getting set up for success.
It's kind of interesting, Juan, yours, because you've kind of come in and had to tidy it up and name change just to kind of remove some of the legacy issues that may have been associated with it. But you've tidied it up, really tight share structure after the rollback. You've got some of the nice names in there and historic data and all of that. It's all good stuff. But I'm not quite sure where we're meant to be looking. That's the problem here. Because Niblack, you've talked about bulk underground tailings. You're doing all this drilling. I don't know to what end. So what should I be focused on? Because when you talk the language of BFS with a 28 million market cap, I'm like, doesn't make sense.
You're bang on. But that's what the vision has to be. You have to. What is the exit going to be? Is it good? Are we just going to keep on drilling holes and hope for the best? If you're an explorer, a pure grassroots explorer, absolutely, that's what you're doing. In our case, where this is advanced and we do have a market cap of that size, what's going to move us? Retail. So we're going to keep on drilling and exploring, but in the background, this is what our vision is. Now, the thing about Niblack, it's located right on the oceans, great location, but there's no spot there for a mill or tailings facility. You have to barge the ore somewhere. And so this is something we've been actively working on for actually almost a year, is a site where we can transport the ore. And what our bigger vision is we're looking at other opportunities where you can combine the ore from Niblack into a hub and spoke type arrangement. So that's the ultimate vision. When does that becomes a big institutional story a couple of years down the road? Right now, we're in the story where, I believe there's potential for much larger deposit at Niblack. So that's what we're showing the world through accretive drilling that's going to add tons. And then once we start to get into a bit more of a time where we can talk about the economics and the project without our arms waving wildly, that's when we'll talk about it. But for the meantime, we're gonna keep drilling. And it's also keep a pipeline going. We take these new claims as well too.
Well, I'll talk about those. I got them on the list. Don't worry, they're coming up. But I think it's important that for you guys, because it's tough as a small junior, you've got to wave your hands. You've got to try and get noticed, and you've got to put the best foot forward, your best story forward, and you've got to try and control that narrative. I get it, because there's a lot of competition, but at the same time, you've also got to help people understand what is the focus of this thing. If you're saying we're going to keep drilling, that makes a lot of sense. Hub and spoke. That's all down the line. The big scoping study, they're all down the line. So the drilling has, you've presented some great numbers out there. So you've got how much cash in the bank?
Right now we're at about we're probably just under the 3 million mark.
Right. Okay. So I guess there's some more assays coming through, and you've got some more spend, which is going to go into drilling. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and as well as too, and that's what we put it in the release into the camp upgrades. We're not buying a camp. We're leasing one from an Indigenous owned company. We're buying some new fuel tanks and stuff like that. So there is some of that capital, but then otherwise it's more going into the ground, drilling and sampling and geophysics.
Right. So if retail's a solution, why did you bring in so much more institutional in the last round?
Because they're long.
Right.
And it's retail buys in the market and sells in the market, and picking up longer institutions that buy into the overall vision. that, it's like when you have a tight structure, liquidity, they want to be able to, a lot of the institutional investors have to be able to get out. And so we haven't attracted those type. Once we get a bigger market cap and the liquidity picks up later, they'll come in.
It's a funny thing. It's a funny thing you've got to manage here, because you've got to be at a price that is institutions will like. They've got to be able to buy enough. Right. And if they're long, the liquidity is not such an issue for them right now. It is for you, though. So what's your solution? Are you going to be doing more raises, but then going just to retail? Is that the logic?
It's where, you look at each round as stepping stones, and the types of investors that are coming up in those rounds, they will be replaced by others. You are going to see them sell down the road. If a retail is double, and, our two most recent TPs were at 80 cents. You're at $1.60. I know I sometimes sell half, but then you're larger. So you have large market cap. So you can bring in some of the small institutions that we brought in. The next round, if we're bringing in like the Arbans and the VanEck, or, the larger ones that have certain liquidity mandates, that's when, you're replacing those retail and those other investors. So each one we're looking at, we want to do each consecutive raise at a higher price. One thing, like, and this is, I'm not saying anything that's not out there, but what would a CEO like me look at for a next round? What can be good at these levels is you look at strategics, where maybe it's a corporate that wants to come in. There's quite a few, and it's interesting to see how they rotate, where there's corporates out there right now that are writing lots of checks, including there's like one that they're writing checks, but companies aren't allowed to say who's buying them. So maybe one of having a mid-tier or major producer coming in could be a good investor. Or you look at the large, and a lot of them are pretty well-known names, retail investors. Eric Sprott being the best known name that can come into deals. You look at one of those as the next round, or do you do another mix where it's just you talk to a bunch of brokers and they get in a bunch of their retail clients. We think we're still significantly undervalued given the size of the asset and what's coming down the pipe. So but we know that there should be, and certainly other investors will see that as well too. So the short answer is I don't have one for who the next round's going to come in, but there's certainly demand.
You're going to need to, Rob, because you're going to need a plan. Because if you're saying on one hand, retail's the solution, and then you're dishing your shares out to institutional, there's a disconnect there. And also,
it's always a balance. It's not binary, Matt. And in fact, a lot of the institutions, they trade like retail. Like, some of these funds, they're $5 million funds. We all know lots of retail investors that trade way more, that will write $5 million checks into deals. So they're the types where now you want to have them in because they'll stay long. They might sell some at the end of the quarter, but they'll also support you, and they'll bring in more buys. So we're right in that sort of level. But to be able to get that next stage, that's where we do. I am, of course, talking to corporates. I am talking to institutions. We'll do an accretive raise if somebody says, "Hey, we'll do a deal with you," particularly in that this might sound crazy, but a lot of these corporates will come in at a premium. So part of our vision includes there's a big ESG component to it, which is, certainly if you're probably seeing in Europe is becoming more and more the one of the first things that institutional investors will look at. We have that as part of our overall vision. That retail, and not to insult any retail investors out there, but ESG is typically not the first thing they look at.
It's not, and maybe that's one for another day, because I think that's a very, very, very big topic which we're spending a bit of time on, with our club members. But I just want to stay with this share thing. Well, marketing, I guess, right? That's you've got 5 analysts covering you at the moment, and I don't know what effect that has, and for a $30 million company, that's not too bad going, quite frankly. But is that working for you? Are what they're saying working for you? Are they people listening to them?
So you know what? It's two things that are moving, like that moving stocks these days. Of course, there's drill results. Drill results certainly moved us, particularly with that first batch. The other part is marketing does work. Like we have, you can retain groups that will promote you. And it can be a difficult decision for what, and I'm speaking frankly of what CEOs have to do. Do you want to do a $400,000 mail up?
No.
Is that a good use of proceeds from investors?
No.
It's interesting that a lot of retail investors want to see that done because it will bring in the volume that can increase your share price by 30%.
It's short-termism. It's short-termism, and that's the problem.
That you're bang on, and particularly for a lot of the speculative plays or speculative commodities. So what has worked well for me, and what is the basis of our following? It's getting onto shows like yours or like Kai's and Trevor Hall, and telling your story and working the phone and having good, honest, transparent disclosure. And that's where those are the type of investors that will stick with you more than the hot money. So, and the other thing is, or if you have really good results coming and you put good results out, sometimes that's a good time to do some of that marketing work. The exposure, again, as long as it's completely ethical. You are going to see some cracking down on it, which is actually a really good thing from the exchange and particularly the securities commissions on some of the hired guns that are
good. Two things. Both names you mentioned there, good people. Trevor Hall and Kai Hoffman, good people. There's some other dubious ones, but I'd like your honesty with regards to that example. Do you go and spend $400,000 on a campaign which is going to get you a hike in the price for 3 months, then it's going to come back down to where it started? I've seen that all too often, and that's great for shareholders who perhaps want to flip out of you, but that's all on the promote, got nothing to do with your fundamentals, and I'm more interested in your fundamentals. So let's kind of move away from the marketing, the promote, and the difficulties of being a CEO. I don't feel sorry for you, by the way. That's why you guys get paid money. Let's look at Niblack, okay? Because there's a few moving parts to that. You've talked about, obviously you've got a bunch of historic data, and you understand a lot more about it than if you're coming at it in a greenfield situation. So how are you imagining moving that forward? You've got $3 million today, you're telling me, in cash, right?
Yeah.
You can only do so much with that. That's the reality. So what's the best way of moving that forward to allow you to go to market and raise capital in a few short months?
So it's, to continue with results will move you. But it's also, maybe this contradicts a little bit with what I said on the marketing side. It's getting the story out, because we're really, really cheap. And the new claims to estate, or you said specifically about Niblack, this is a project that once there was exploration success and they went underground, is that the rest of the property somewhat got forgotten. And that's okay. You can focus on one zone and keep on growing the zone. But now that we have the new geology figured out, the next thing that we're going to do is work up some of these other targets. There's a hole that's sitting out by itself that's sat out there since 1994 at a zone called the Dama Zone. 19 meters of 6% copper. True width is probably half that. That's really, really good grade. Where is it going? I have no clue. We need some more information. So what's one of the best ways to do it? IP geophysics. So we're getting that done. Again, this whole interpretation, and if it's a nice tabular system, the whole thing being overturned doesn't matter. But now, since the whole thing is overturned, where we thought there was a fold close, or they previously thought was a fold closure, it's actually going the other way. So where it was thought was closed is open. And conversely, where I thought it was open was closed. And so this has been such a big, kind of a new paradigm shift in the whole approach to exploration at the project is that we want to make sure that we have it right. And so, putting out a press release where we've got a really great IP geophysical anomaly, is that going to move the stock? Might.
Anomalies, targets, no. People want discoveries. That's what they want, Rob.
So that was actually one of the impetus as well too for the new claims that we state.
Well, that's what that leads on nicely, okay? Because there's a couple of questions here, which is you referenced them earlier about some new claims that you've staked, and I'd love to understand why you've done that. I've got some questions sent in with regards to potential acquisitions. Is M&A part of the strategy? So why don't you talk around how you build potential scale?
So M&A is part of our strategy. We've been upfront about that since day one. Nibelac's a great deposit, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's on the smaller side. There's 5.6 million tons of indicated. There's 2.4 million tons of inferred. You can add them up. And there's subsequent drilling since, so it's a bit bigger than that. But it's still, it's not a 100 million ton ore body. And so are the economics good? Yeah, they're quite good. What makes it even better? Combining it with something else. And so that's part of the, this whole vision where we have to barge the ore somewhere. There are stranded deposits in Southeast Alaska and in Northwest British Columbia that would work well with Niblac. But we've been working on, some corporate development, some M&A type work.
But for ages, though. For ages. Sure. So how do you find stuff that's going to work? Are you going to be able to find stuff that works? Because you've been talking about that for a long time, right?
Yeah, we have, and we've put out in some cases there's deals that would not be accretive, and there's other cases that are. And so it's where like these other companies or projects, they're in the same boat. You get economics, but if you're building one mill and one tailings facility, then suddenly the economics of combining the two really work. Then you have two projects to fund. So you got to be careful about that. So if we did do some corporate development work like that, it would have to come with some capital. And so, that's all part of the thing. And this is the job of the CEO when you have advanced projects is how can you add value? How can you find that exit by being creative and seeing something that nobody else has seen before.
Have you got the capability to do that? Because I think we see lots of small junior companies, sub 30 million, right? And it's really difficult because what they say they've got, they don't usually have. And once you and I have been into data rooms, right? We know what you see when you get in there. You sometimes, the public sees and what you see in data rooms, usually very poorly aligned, and you walk away 9 times out of 10, okay? Finding projects which have this spoken hub type facility or a roll up, however you want to position it, it sounds exciting. The doing of it is difficult because you've got two sets of management who have to agree to come together because both are running on vapor, usually, and the sum of the parts sounds good on paper, but the reality is the asset isn't quite what you thought. The management team don't want to do the deal because they're going to lose their job and they can't agree on a price. And putting those sorts of deals together is really, really hard. It seems like the smart thing to do. So are you actually going to be able to deliver it?
So you're absolutely bang on for other public companies. And it's where often those conversations, where this is it's not going to go anywhere. Or there's like, we got this one shareholder and, they're big believers and they wouldn't want to do it. So the conversation ends. Looking at privately held assets is a different matter. And so those are the type of projects that we have been targeting. And and then the other companies that are out there that are like, yeah, we would love to have a mill where we can take our ore. It's a big thing. It'll take, if it's in Alaska, there's some permitting risk. In BC, there can be some permitting. And so this is, again, part of the whole overall vision is in venture capital, you should dream big. And, and going through the steps to get there, you're not going to flip a switch and suddenly you're $1 billion market cap. But what are the stepping stones to get there? In this, we're still at early stage. It's retail and drilling and exploration success and growing can help. But then you can really change if you're if you're de-risking Niblack, if you're de-risking the development of the project, but you're accretively adding some other asset. And I don't say accretive flippantly, that here's something that's standalone negative IRR by itself, but you combine it with Niblack and it becomes positive. So that's where there's not enough of this stuff that gets done in mining at all. I've heard it for 2 decades. And it's typical because most of these companies are public, even the majors. How long did it take Barrick and Newmont to work together? You see it more like Kirkland Lake consolidating the Kirkland Lake camp, which was usually 4 mines. So, and it's part of the experience. And hey, can we do it? Well, our management team, this is the part of the world that we work in. This is what, we feel that we are good at on the permitting, the engineering, and the exploration side, and the leadership. And certainly in what is a founding pillar for this company, the community and Indigenous engagement and inclusion. And so, putting all those together, that's the foundations for real success, doing it right in my books.
Right.
And
So from what I'm hearing here is Black Wolf Copper and Gold is a nice cornerstone project. It's a okay size, like you've said yourself. It's an okay size. It's okay economics. It's not earth shattering, but if you can do some of this biz dev, if you can get some of this M&A, private sounds like the route you want to go down. That's understandable. But you've got to stick to your knitting and also get Niblack sorted first of all as well, because people are not going to walk into a deal with you until you've nailed that to some degree. So does that give us a sense of timing for all of this? Big wishes, big aspirations are great.
And so this is, it's kind of a insight into Howe Street, Vancouver, where probably the majority of CEOs are having today M&A discussions. 99% of them never work out, but they today are having it. We're certainly no exception, but we are a lot more.
Well, here's my problem. I think 99% of CEOs say they're open to M&A discussions. However, I don't know how many actually are, but you're right. I think the net result is maybe 1% of all possible deals do get done.
Oh yeah, and it's again, it comes back to one of your first comments about getting into data rooms, and all of Junior Miner, we're part of it. We do a press release today. We put our best hole in the headline. It's all the best things about your company. You get into data rooms, and you're like, oh my God, this project sucks, right? And and that's where things sort of fall apart. Oh, it makes sense putting you two together. You're like, oh, not really for us. And it's a glass houses business. So you typically have to keep your mouth shut afterward. Or of course you do under confidentiality. But it's where, evaluate, particularly for smaller juniors, because valuations also fluctuate so much. You might have a good ratio, and then, the 20-cent stock that was trading at 20 cents goes to 25. And suddenly the ratios are all screwed up again. So, there should be some more M&A, and I think all of these CEOs and companies are all really well-meaning, and I hope to see more. But there's usually way more reasons not to do the deal than to do the deal that ends up getting focused on. Often that's usually to the detriment of the combined shareholder.
Designed by committee, always a winner.
Yep.
Okay. You've been doing a bit of staking, so you've got there's some new claims perhaps we should be talking about. What are you doing there? Yeah, and it's
there's a real interesting backstory to these new claims that we picked up, Matt. So I grew up in the Golden Triangle in the mining town of Stewart, right next to Hydra, Alaska, and have obviously followed pretty closely over the decades how new mines have come and gone, and discoveries and geology and stuff. And just a little bit of family history. The Brucejack mine, which is operated by Pretium, that's actually named after my family, my cousin and my grandfather. And the Valley of the Kings, and just recently there's some really good drill results about these super high grade electrum veinlets that carry that deposit. were just recently drilled, and that's the basis for that mine. My dad passed away about a decade ago, and just during the winter, I was reading a bunch of his old files and a whole bunch of old photos, historical stuff. And it talked about there's this area in Alaska where there's these same style of electrum veins that they found on the margin of a glacier. And back in the 20s and 30s, they tunneled thousands of feet through the ice to try and find the source of it. And they actually found some of these veins, and they mined them. And, the amount of, I cannot understate how much the glaciers have shrunk in this part of the world. There has been no modern exploration in the Golden Triangle on the Alaska side of the border. It's remarkable. So after seeing this, I was like, maybe this should be something that we should do. I have this right in front of me. This could be really good accretive properties for Black Wolf. And we did some more research. We found that actually the most recent work was in the 1990s by the U.S. government federal geologists. There used to be a Department of Mines. And they went out and sampled all these, really high grade gold and silver numbers from a whole variety of either these old mines or prospects. So we're like, this is wide open. Let's go out and stake it, and go out and walk where no other geologist or prospector has gone before. So it's really exciting. You look just across the border at other juniors that have, $20 to $50 million market caps on basically the same sort of speculative exploration ground. But this is, people have a tough time knowing how to stake federal claims in Alaska. So probably one of the reasons why this ground was open and that we pegged it. So we're really excited about these projects. I'm going to be going up to take a look at it because our technical team is one of the best in the Golden Triangle, and heading out with my geos just to have it's just going to be a small reconnaissance survey type of exploration program, but that's how these big things are found,
So what scale are we talking about, Rob?
With the scale, so these are the total area is 3,600 hectares. The main claim block is almost 10 kilometers long by 3.5 kilometers wide. And there's a second block that is right next to Ascot Resources Premier project. So you cross the border, and then there's this area where they used to, and this sounds crazy, they used to actually just pick boulders, the mineralization off the ground, put them on pack horses, and ship them off. So, and it's in this intrusive rock that we really like. So that's about a 1.5 by 2 kilometer claim block. But this is completely virgin discovery ground. So again, it's also, one, and this comes from experience. It's always good to have a pipeline of these projects. If something happened, Niblack didn't work out, what's next, right? So it's always good to be trying to, it is like, not to make it sound too grandiose, but it is like chess. You do have to think a few moves down the road, right?
Right. I've got a lot out of today. Things are moving afoot. The drill results are fantastic. We just want to see more of it, more assay results, more drilling. Show us what the potential of Niblack could be. I buy that you are cognizant of the fact that you need to scale this through acquisition. And then with regards to the mill, if you are going to have to barge, there's a cost implication there. But if you can get synergies through like roll-ups or spoken wheel or however you want to do it, or partnerships, JVs, etc., that's all kind of fine in the future. So if you're going to take you're saying you, Rob, are going to take the lead on this and kind of put this together with some of these other opportunities out there. Have you gone as far as looking, where do you locate a mill? Where's the potential location for a mill? Where are you barging this to? Are you looking that far forward?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and in fact, it's like you have to do it right from the start. There are sensitivities. There are some places that shouldn't be developed. There are places that shouldn't have mills and tailings facilities, that maybe there is too much environmental risk. So that's always a cognizant if you really do care. that that social side, or maybe there's communities that don't want it, but then there's other ones that do. And then what if there's a site already that exists out there? Maybe that's brownfield, that already has had an existing site. That's something that you're going to go and look at. So, that's, hey, I won't sugarcoat. Alaska has a permitting reputation. Maybe a lot of it has to do with Pebble that's been so controversial for 2 decades. Mines, we love it. Mines do get permitted there for sure. There's some new ones that are being built up there and permitted right now. But it's something you have to do if you have an advanced project that you have to be thinking about and talking and working on all the time.
Rob, thanks for your time today. That was brilliant.